Peace. What's going on, family? Joshua Tree back with another video. Today's video, I would love to talk about the concept of fear. This acronym that we have shared throughout the spiritual community. Fear is nothing but false evidence appearing real. I want to go a little bit more deeper on that concept. I want to kind of bring more awareness to you guys of what fear can look like on a more spiritual, energetic level, and maybe you can have a more of a deeper understanding how to detach yourself from fear. Okay. So this what this video is going to be about. Of course, I got me some drawings to help support my teachings. And let's get into this video. So what I discovered in my meditation about fear is very profound. So in order for me to share this realization, I broke it down in 7 stages. So let's check it out. All right, family. So as you can tell, I broke it down to 7 stages of fear. Okay. So before we get into each stage, let's just talk about just the overview of what we have here, right? So the first stage is what I like to call the pure self. Okay. And this is the stage was before the programming happened. Okay. The second stage is the origin of the fear. All right. This is where the fear started to become embodied. This is what I like to call the new identity. All right. So this is the second stage. The third stage is the program is now complete, and now you have fear that is a part of you. All right. As you can see right there. All right. Now we get to the fourth stage, which I would like to call the lower correspondence. This is considered to be the ego at this point, the projected self. And now we have the fifth stage, which is free from illusion. This is the meditative self. Okay. And then we have the sixth stage, which is the separation or the origins of separation stage right here, where you become the observant self, right? And then we have the last stage, which is the seventh stage, which is the freedom stage, which I consider to be being back to the pure self, which you'll see a correlation, pure self, going back to pure self. So let's just get into it. All right, so let's talk about the first stage, which is the pure stage. So I would like to look at this pure self or before the programming stage as the inner child. So when we were children, we had everything that we needed. We were fulfilled, we were whole. There was nothing that we needed in terms of feeling complete. And at this particular stage, this is where the program hasn't taken place yet. So, in terms of fear, because we're talking about fear, right? False evidence appearing real. We're talking about fear. Okay. Think about a child, think about a baby. When babies are going through their incorporation stage, basically they're, putting everything in their mouth, they're jumping on things, they're climbing on things, they're trying to incorporate different things in their environment to try to understand more about what it is that they're interacting with, but also they are expanding their limitations. They're expanding what is it that I am. And you'll notice that children, they'll run in the streets when there's cars present. I drive school buses for a living as well. So I see a lot of these children that be jumping and flipping on the buses while the bus is in motion. Children naturally don't have a fear. Children will tell people how they feel. They will tell them very bluntly, yo, I don't like you. They don't hug you if they don't like you. Like, children are naturally fearless. Let's just be very clear. This is considered to be your pure self stage. This is before the program. You are naturally fearless at heart. The core of you is naturally fearless. All right, moving along. Okay, we are at the second stage. We call this the origin of fear or the new identity. So this is the true identity, and then you start to create a new identity. So if you notice, what I drew is I drew some squiggly lines. I drew a little dark space right there. I drew some dots. What this means is that you're being influenced by so many different types of energy. You're being influenced by so many different types of external stimuli that is creating this mixture of energy within you. So you got social conditioning influencing your psyche. You got childhood trauma influencing your body, right? You got limiting beliefs just influencing your root all throughout the whole entire body. These three components, let's just say that's outside of you, is starting to create a fear within you. Okay, so you went from just being completely fearless to now all these things outside of you is creating this new identity. Okay, so this is where everything begins. This is where they say that the child gets between the ages of 0 and 7, or I like to say 0 and 9 because 9 represents the number of completion. This is where you'll notice that the little child has been at the ends of their whole cycle, and this is where the process is complete. So this when we move on to stage 3. Stage 3 is the completed self. This is the program that's been completed. So all of this social conditioning, all this programming has now came to a state of completion, which is now considered to be the fear self. Now you have an embodied all of, say, your limiting beliefs from your mother and your parents, or your father. All of their fear has been projected into you. All of your childhood trauma has been projected into you. All of social conditioning from society, or how they tell you to be fearful of this and be fearful of that. Watch out for this, watch out for that. You got TV shows like Fear Factor, where you're watching all these different exercises and all these different competitions and games that they're playing, that is all surrounded around fear, right? So you're embodying all this, and now you become the fear self. So now I broke it down. I said it's 90% fear and 10%, which is 90% unconscious, and 10% that you're conscious of. That's, let's just say, that you're not fearful of. So you're like more fearful than anything, and you're 10%, let's say, purified, or 10% conscious of the things that you will know that you can do as an adult or do as a person. But if you're 90% fearful, let's just say your whole construct is fear based. So let's move on to the next step. All right. And so if your whole construct is fear based, let's talk about the projected self. This is the part that most of us are operating at. And this is the stage where most people are considered to be complete, and they live their whole life based in this particular stage. They never move past stage 4. They never get to stage 5, 6, or 7. This is the stage that what we call doing the inner work. This is the stage where you really want to reflect and go deep within yourself to understand who you are. And so the projected self, why I call it the projected self, because everything that you are experiencing outside of yourself is a projection that's going on within yourself. So you see how they have these arrows pointing outward. So everything that you experience, you are literally reflecting that back to yourself. So that's why I call it the law of correspondence, which is the law of correspondence is as above, so below, as within, so without. Everything that's going on and externally outside of you is a reflection of what's going on internally. So every experience you have in a relationship, every experience you have with your money, every experience you have with your career, your health, your wellness is being reflected outside of you, it's being projected outside of you, but it's reflected inside of you. Okay. So this is what we call the full-fledged ego. So you went from the program is now complete, and now you're walking throughout Earth, you're walking throughout planets, you're walking throughout society with this part of yourself. And like I said, you're 90% fear-based. So even let's say you want to get in a relationship, right? You have an arrow that wants to get into a relationship. You got to be mindful that you also been traumatized. So anytime you've been traumatized, especially because childhood trauma deals with relational trauma is going to always influence all relationships. So you see, this is where most people have to stay and do the work, but they don't do the work. So they become fear based. And so when you project out and say, I want to have a relationship, that fear of being in a relationship is still present. If your mother, your father was never present, and you have suffered from an abandonment wound, when you get in a relationship, you're going to project that fear onto your partner. What that looks like is that when your partner starts to love you, you start to get triggered. Fear is triggered inside of you, and you actually push them away, or you sabotage the relationship. So you see how deep this fear goes inside of us, where it's literally controlling every action, every behavior, every thought, everything that we do in existence. But this is also key, is that when you're in this stage, if you're projecting all these insecurities and fear onto other people, they're going to reflect it back to you. You don't get mad at them, you don't go in on them and say, well, this person hurt me, this person done this. No, 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 no. This is where we take accountability, because that person who has hurt you to some degree is mirroring something inside of you that you haven't healed from. This is the wounded ego. Okay. This is the part of us that is hurting everybody on a consistent basis. The saying is hurt people hurt people. This part right here is the darkness that we want to face. Okay. Now, all right, so I want to go a little bit deeper into the understanding of this false evidence appearing real, right? So, if this is, say, the realization about what fear is, why do they call it false evidence appearing real? The reason why they're saying that is because when you think about subjectivity versus objectivity, a lot of our subconscious reprogramming is subjective based. Everything that we experience in life has been based off of a negative bias disposition, a negative bias perspective, and none of it is true. So let's just say, for instance, you're walking outside and you are about to split the pole, right? People already know if you came up in the hood, they always say never split the pole because that's considered to be bad luck. Now, let's go a little bit deeper into that. That doesn't mean that that's a fact. That just means that is a superstitious, subjective idea or perspective on what bad luck means. That doesn't mean that it is factual. It is very subjective. So if that is something like a childhood thing that we do where we're very mindful of splitting poles because it means you'll get bad luck. Now think about everything in life that you're constantly giving your ideas to or about or perceiving it as X, Y, and Z, but there's no facts. There's no facts in none of it. It's just shit that you have made up or shit that society has told you and we have validated as some form of truth when it never was truth to begin with. There was all projections of fear. Okay. So understanding fear from an energetic standpoint is that fear is an entity. Okay. It can take over your body and then you start to embody the fear frequency. Okay. So think about the movie Venom with Spider-Man, not Spider-Man. The guy, I forgot his name, but the Venom movie, of course, it correlates to Spider-Man. But when you watch the movie Venom, okay, of course, he has this venom, this entity, this black substance that's attached to him, and this black substance tells him over, I want to eat this, I want to do this, and it has its own consciousness that is driving the behavior of the man that it is embodying. It is a parasite attached to the host. Fear is similar to that. Okay. Fear attaches to us, we're the host, and we listen to the ideas and thoughts that fear tries to project onto us. And we think it's us. We think that these thoughts are coming from our true self or our pure self. But like I said, in stage one, your pure self is an embodiment of fearlessness. So these thoughts that we're receiving is coming from this entity that's been created outside of us that's attached to us. Okay. So when we say false evidence appearing real, what that really means is that false. Everything is false. Everything is not true. Everything is a lie. Everything that you've seen outside of yourself is the thoughts that you're projecting onto the world. So let me give you this quote. One of the most powerful quotes that I've been meditating on is be in the world, but not of the world. All right. So if you really reflect on that and you really meditate on that, what that's really saying is that us, our true selves, we're not of this world. We're in the world, but we're not of this world. So if we are being constantly influenced by the world and we're taking in the poison from the world, then we start to become a part of the world. Well, our true selves is not of this world. Our true self has none of these uh atrocities and violence and level of, let's say, wickedness that goes on in the world. These are all things that we have embodied because we're compassionate people, we're caring people. We don't want to see the negativity that goes on in the world, and so as a result we respond to it and we start to embody it or start to internalize it. But to go a little bit deeper, okay, in order to change the world, you don't do it by trying to change the world. In order to change the world, you have to change your thoughts about the world. So if you pay attention to your thoughts are actually what's creating the world around you. If you give anything outside of you meaning, it becomes a part of your world. So for example, if I go outside right now and I look at the grass, or I look at the tree, or I look at a plant, or I look at a bird, or I look at a bee, these energies doesn't have too much meaning to me. Therefore, it's something that I don't actually give my attention to. It's just like furniture in my house. I don't give it much attention. I just know it's there. And so if I'm not giving it that much attention, then I can say that this is not really a part of my world that I deem something that is worth me paying attention to. So another example, what would that be, is let's say Donald Trump. Most people don't like Donald Trump. But the only reason why you don't like Donald Trump because you have gave Donald Trump meaning. If you don't give Donald Trump meaning or what Donald Trump means to you, Donald Trump doesn't exist in your world. So it's not that the world is wicked or bad or evil. It's our thoughts, it's our perception and our meaning of these objects that's outside of us that we have gave meaning to, that gives meaning to our world. I want you to sit with that. This is the law of correspondence. Everything happens internal and then it's reflected external. The world around you is being reflected on what you feel. What are your desires? What are your beliefs? What are your preferences? What are your dis and dislikes? What is your meaning to it? If you don't give meaning to something outside of you, it doesn't influence your internal world. If you see a butterfly flying in front of your face, you don't get irritated. You don't get stressed. You don't feel emotional about it. The only emotion you may have is, oh my God, look, it's a butterfly. But even that is something that you want to depolarize. So what I realized in my practice is that it's not about trying to cultivate happy feelings. It's not about trying to dismiss negative feelings. It's about neutralizing all feelings because everything that in this world is not who you truly are. Because everything in this world that's trying to project to you and trying to tell you and condition you that this is who you are, it is always subject to change. So let's get back into this meditation understanding. Okay. So, like I said, what I realize in a meditative state, as I'm understanding this illusion called the fear illusion, the false evidence appearing real, as I'm in a meditative state, I realized that as I am addressing, right, all of the things in my life that I deem meaningful, and it started to release out of my level of awareness and my emotional connection to it, there was this peace that started to become more present. There was this calmness that starts to become more present. And so my whole thing is this: if I'm starting to feel peace and calmness every time I'm in a meditative state, and I notice every time I'm in a meditative state, that's what always and has always been present, it never changes, then that's when I start to realize, hold up. Peace and calmness is consistent in meditation. When I try to navigate and process anger, fear, depression, sadness, anxiety, and all these other forms of emotions, they start to dissipate when I realize that I am no longer going to attach myself or internalize these emotions. Once they dissipate, I start to feel more peace. I start to feel more calmness. So that's what made me realize, Josh, there is no such thing as fear. Because if there was a such thing as fear, when you're in a meditative state, it would be present and it will stay present within your body. Once I release the fear, all I receive is peace and calmness. That's my true state. That's my true awareness. So that's what made me realize, like, Josh, this is why I say you are not of this world. Because the world is constantly trying to project its fear onto you, and we constantly just receiving it. It's like a quarterback keep throwing a football to a football player. We keep receiving the pass. We keep receiving all the external influences, and then we hold it tight and we carry it with us, and we score a touchdown every time. Meaning that we taking all of this external stimuli, and we embody it as if it is our own. It's like we're carrying a baby. None of this shit is ours. We can abort mission. When you get into meditative state, there's one energy that's consistent. It never wavers, and that is peace and calmness. So when you're in a meditative state, which is stage 5, like I said, most people don't get to this stage. This is where you start to feel and actually experience a separation from this fear entity, because fear is not calmness, it is not stillness, it is not peace. So the more that you practice your meditation, the more you cultivate and embody the peace state, the more that this energy starts to detach from you. I literally experienced this today. And that's what made me realize, like, oh shit, there's a separation here. There's a space in between this. And your awareness, which never changes, the witness, the observer, which we're about to talk about next, is observing this detachment taking place within your body. All right. So let's go to the next stage. All right. And like I said, we have gotten to the free from illusion stage. This is the meditative state. And now we have gotten to the next stage, which is stage 6. This is the separation stage. This is where you start to begin to separate. Have became the observant self, and now you realize, you see, I split it up in two. There's a dark side of you, which is considered to be the fearful part of you, and then there's the true self on the other side. All right. So this is a very important stage because once you go through the meditative state and you start to see the truth, all meditation is doing is bringing you to the truth. That's all. It's a vehicle for truth. Once you start to see the truth of who you are, because who you are never changes, it always is and always has. You start to see that this fearfulness is trying to attach to you just like a parasite. It doesn't want to die. So it starts to try to fight. And this is where you're going to be going back and forth between these two stages. You're going to constantly be an observer, constantly go into meditation to help you release. The meditative state is to help you release. When you see that fear, you know that, okay, this is not who I truly am. Because when I get into that deeper state of existence, which is that peace and stillness, you start to realize, like, this is who I am. This part of me, this energy right here is consistent. I don't know what this is. And you can just take a deep breath and relax and release. Give it no meaning. I literally want you guys to just say it to yourself. This world, these thoughts, these emotions have no meaning. And watch how the ego, right, the fear starts to react in a meditative state. And so you just stay as the observer and you just keep observing. You don't detach to nothing. You are the observer, and the peace and calmness is within you, and that just naturally starts to arise. Okay. And so then when we get to the last stage, like I said, this is similar to the movie The Venom. Get to the last stage, this is the freedom stage. So you watch the Venom, when him and the Venom started to attach, the Venom was a parasite. It was, you could say, it was a parasite. It granted it gave him superpowers and all that, but it wasn't who he truly was. You know what I'm saying? So the Venom, or in this case fear, like I said, is an entity. It has its own consciousness. Once it realizes that you're trying to separate from it, you go back into the pure self. So this is the fear, or the energy of fear, starting to become more loose, starting to detach, starting to dissipate, starting to become eradicated, and you're doing the inner work. This is the inner work stages, right? Where you are starting to release this fear from you. And like I said, let's say 90% of that fear is present within you. You'll notice fear in every area of your life. If it's relationships, if it's career, if it's fitness and wellness and health, if it's money, it's in everything. So 90% is considered to be, subconscious based, right? They say 90% of our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are ran from the subconscious mind. So we can say that you have a lot of fear that's in different areas. Okay. So take your time with this and just keep challenging yourself in your meditative state to just let go of fear, because that's not who you truly are. And so we start the journey, right? We start the journey and it seems like we're going forward, but in reality, we're going backwards. We're going back to our pure self. We're going back to the most authentic part of ourselves before all the programming, before all the lies, before all of the deceit, for all the deception. This is who we're going back to. And this is what we call the stage of freedom. Freeing yourself from fear. Because fear, like I said, is false evidence appearing real. It's a subjective entity. Okay. And so the more that you realize that you've been living in a space of just mental illusions that you have either justified for yourself, gaslighted for yourself, or someone told you that is true, I want you to question that and just release and detach yourself from that. Right. This is the last stage. Okay. All right, guys. So to end off on that note, I just want y'all to know, at the core of who you are not from this world. Okay. You are not from this world. When you watch a bunch of movies and they always show about all these super humanoid type, alien type people who coming from all these different planets with all these superpowers, like say Superman, for instance, they all come from another world. And they come into this world and they become conditioned as a human. We are not from this world. We literally came from a woman. We came from a portal. That alone lets you know that we are from this world. We had came from a whole portal to get here. All right. So the world is kind of constantly trying to condition you and to make you believe that you are of this world. A great practice, and I highly recommend, it is very advanced, And so you haven't done a lot of meditative, I highly suggest that you take your time with it. But there is a resource that I utilize and I've been utilizing consistently for the past 2-3 weeks or so. Is a book called The Course of Miracles, which you can get on Amazon, but it's a very thick book, very thick book. I don't have that particular book because I've looked at all the reviews and people say it's very hard to read. There's another book called The Course of Miracles, the easy version or something like that. That's the book that I have. But to get straight to the practices is which I'm doing right now, just going straight to the sauce. You can go on Google and type in the Course of Miracles workbook or the Course of Miracles course, and it's like 365 days worth of practices. And the practices are centered around everything in life is meaningless. We give it meaning. Now, just want to give you a little disclaimer that if you are strongly attached to your identity, your emotions, the possessions around you, you may be very challenged with this practice because it is a true practice of detachment. But for people who want to get into a space of true peace and want to understand who your true nature is, I highly suggest that you get into this practice. All right. So to end off on that note, this is, like I said, the 7 stages to fear. If you felt that this resonated or helped in any way, shape, form, or capacity, please share a comment down below. Also, please like the video to help out with the algorithm. I'm still trying to understand this whole algorithm with YouTube, but it is what it is. So if it definitely supported you, I would love for you to hit that like button. Of course, share with a friend, do what it do. And on that note, you already know I like to let y'all go. And on that note, peace.